She was betrayed, humiliated, left with a box full of words that hurt more than silence. But what she didn't know was that those letters hid something even deeper. Decades later, Clara discovers the true reason behind the betrayal, and the revelation involves her missing sister, family secrets, and a man who seemed to never age. Watch until the end and find out why keeping those letters was the only thing that kept her alive. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to the channel for more soul-touching stories. That cardboard box should have been gone years ago. I knew it. Every time I bumped into it, sitting on top of the guest room closet, my heart skipped a beat. Not because it held anything valuable, but because it weighed. Not with physical weight, but with memories, with pain, with time trapped inside, folded, signed, sealed. And yet, I never had the courage to throw it away. The truth is that I had already forgotten most of the words, not the letters, but the words. It was as if my mind had erased the details to protect me. But that Sunday, with the musty smell in the air and the house silent after my daughter's visit, I climbed up on the bench and took the box out of the closet. Not because I wanted to, but because somehow I felt that the time had come. I opened it slowly, as if I were digging up a body. The yellowed paper, carefully folded, was held together by a faded blue ribbon. The first letter was there, exactly as I remembered it. "My love," it began, and I, who had promised never to cry for him again, felt my eyes burn. I don't know why I kept it. I swear I don't know. Or maybe I do, but I still can't admit it. Maybe it's because I'm ashamed. Maybe I'm afraid of forgetting. Or maybe, and this hurts me to say, because no matter how much he betrayed me, no matter how much he destroyed everything we built together, a part of me still needed to remember who I was, while I loved that man. My name is Clara. I'm 58 years old, and this is not a love story. It's a story of silence, of letters that should have been burned, but that stayed with me as witnesses to everything I never told anyone. I met Daniel one morning in February. I was running late, with wet hair, and my dress sticking to my back from the heat. He was holding the door to the bakery for me, with a gentle smile and eyes that seemed to see beyond what I was showing. I remember thinking, he's just a polite man. But when he looked at me again, as if he recognized me from somewhere I didn't even know existed, I was lost. He was sweet. He was attentive. He was the kind of guy who asked how my day was and genuinely wanted to know. He wrote me notes when he got to work early. He made me coffee in a cup that said, "Your favorite Braba." He called me Stubborn Star because I never apologized right away. For 3 years, we were just that, a beautiful cliché, until the first letter arrived. It wasn't a love letter. It was a letter of apology. I remember sitting on the porch, with my feet in a basin of warm salt water, trying to relieve the swelling in my legs. The letter arrived folded inside an envelope with no return address, but with his handwriting on it. "Clara, I need to tell you something before you find out from someone else," was the first sentence. My heart stopped, and for a second, I thought it was about his mother, or his job, or some debt. But no, it was another woman. And worse, one I knew. One who had been in my living room weeks before, sitting on my couch, drinking coffee with her legs crossed and a big smile. One who, until then, I had called a friend. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't call him. I folded the letter, my hands shaking, and put it back in the envelope. Then I went to the kitchen drawer and got a box of matches, and I couldn't light them. The fire seemed too easy, too immediate. I wanted it to hurt, to take a long time. I wanted to feel each letter of those words slowly burning inside me. The next day, he showed up, crying, begging, saying it was over, that it was a mistake, that he loved me. And me? I didn't say anything. I just handed him an envelope, with the letter inside. He looked at me with red eyes and asked, "Why didn't you throw it away?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know myself. But that night, after he left, I took the letter out of my bag and put it in the box. The first one. After that, others came. Letters trying to convince me. Explanations, confessions, memories of what we were. Fragments of the man he wanted to be. Declarations that always arrived too late. And me? I read. I read everything. Sometimes with anger. Sometimes with longing. Sometimes wishing I had never learned to read. But I didn't answer. Not once. The box was getting full, and I was getting empty. Until one day he stopped writing. It wasn't a clean break. There was no goodbye. Just silence. The letters stopped. The phone calls stopped. And in a cruel gesture of absence, he disappeared. I spent years thinking he had chosen to disappear, that he had left for another country, that he had started over from scratch somewhere where my name no longer existed. And for a long time, that was enough for me. Pride protected me from the pain. But the truth came too late. Almost 20 years later, it was the last letter he told me. A letter that didn't come in the mail, not even from Daniel. A letter someone left on my doorstep on a rainy afternoon, in an old envelope, with my name handwritten on it, as if time had turned back just to hurt me once more. And what was written there? Well, I'll tell you about that later. The rain was falling softly, almost as if it were hesitant to wet the world. I had just taken the cake out of the oven, the kind of orange cake with burnt sugar frosting that my daughter said tasted like childhood. The house was full of the smell of memories and devoid of any sound other than the dripping sound in the corner of the living room window. That's when I heard the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone. At my age, unannounced visits are almost always mistakes or lost neighbors. I went to the door with the dishcloth still in my hands, my glasses a little crooked on my face. I opened it. There was no one, except for one envelope. Plain, worn, with my name written in a handwriting I didn't immediately recognize. I picked it up. It was dry, despite the rain, and heavy, as if it was carrying more than just paper. I closed the door, my heart already racing instinctively. I sat down at the table, pushing the platter with the cake to the side, and I stared at that envelope as if I were staring at an old enemy. I opened it carefully, tearing only the side. Inside were 3 folded sheets. No sender, no signature. But the contents took my breath away. Clara, if you are reading this, it is because time has finally decided to reveal what I hid from you. Not because I wanted to, but because someone needed to tell me what I didn't have the courage to. His hands began to sweat. The handwriting was steady, slow, and suddenly, strangely familiar. But it wasn't Daniel's. It wasn't his voice. I continued reading. All these years you believed he left, that he chose silence. But that's not true. Daniel didn't abandon you. He was silenced. For me. And that's why you deserve to know. My hands were shaking. My head was starting to hurt. It was as if someone had opened an old wound with a sharp scalpel, right at the spot where I had sewn up the silence. My name is Helena, and I was the other woman, the woman you were betrayed by, the one you called your friend. For a second, I thought it was some cruel joke, that someone had discovered my story, a distant relative perhaps, or a gossipy neighbor, and was teasing me. But there was something about those words that left no room for doubt. It was her. It really was her. At the time, I fell in love with Daniel with the intensity of someone who thinks they deserve more than they have. I was unhappy, and I envied you. The way he talked about you when he thought he wasn't saying anything. I didn't steal your husband because I wanted his love. I did it because I wanted to be you. The tears came as if they had been kept waiting for decades. They fell without me calling them, and I didn't even try to stop them. But Daniel never stopped loving you, Clara. Never. He told me so every time, until the last. And then, there, in the middle of the second page, came the cut. A short paragraph. Cold. Surgical. Daniel died 18 years ago. Of leukemia. He was hospitalized in secret. Alone. Because he didn't want you to see him waste away. Because he wanted you to remember him as he was. Strong. Whole. Yours. And because I promised him I wouldn't let you know. The world stopped. I felt such a huge void open up inside me, that I had to hold onto the chair to keep from falling. 18 years. I had spent 18 years believing he had abandoned me, when in fact, he was dying silently, and protecting me. He wrote letters until the end. Some you received. Others I didn't have the courage to send. I kept them with me. And now, before I leave, because I have the same illness that took him, I felt it was time to give you back what was always yours. In the envelope, there was more. A small bundle of letters tied together with old string, all in his handwriting, and dates. Dates that went beyond the last envelope I had received. Letters he had written in the last months of his life. And there I was, with trembling hands, my face wet with tears, and a question hammering like a hoe in the earth of my chest. Why did she do this now? I opened the first one. It was short, handwritten, with the ink missing in some places. Clara, today the doctor said that I might not see Christmas. I'm scared, but not of dying. I'm scared that you'll hate me, that you'll never understand what I did, and that I'll never be able to tell you that, even though I'm broken, even in silence, I never stopped loving you. I read it and pressed the paper to my chest as if it could come back, as if the heat from my body was enough to warm time and reverse the end. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The truth is that he cheated on me. Yes, he deceived me. He lied. But also, he loved me. And maybe he loved me in a way that I never understood until now. I don't know how many letters there were in that bundle. Maybe 10, maybe more. But I decided that I would read them one by one, calmly, with respect, with the care that I never knew how to give to our story when she was still alive. And when I finished reading the first one and looked at the second one, it was then that I noticed something strange, very strange. At the bottom of the page was a symbol, a tiny ink pencil drawing, a diamond with a line cutting through it. I had seen it before, but where? It wasn't in his other letters, nor in old notes. It was new. And suddenly, a shiver ran down my spine. Because that symbol wasn't his. It was mine. It was a drawing I made when I was a teenager. A scribble I used to sign my diaries. A symbol I never showed to anyone. Except my sister. My sister who disappeared more than 30 years ago. The image of that diamond cut in half froze me for a few seconds. It was just a scribble, discreetly drawn at the bottom of the letter. But to me, it seemed like an explosion. Because no one, absolutely no one, other than my sister Beatrice knew that symbol. It was ours, a childhood secret, a code between the two of us. We used it when we wanted to hide something from adults, when we wrote letters to each other and didn't want our mother to know. It was like an invisible signature, a reminder that no matter what happened, we were still us, Clara and Bea. But Bea disappeared 32 years ago. One night, she went out to buy medicine at the corner drugstore. She didn't take her purse or documents, just her health insurance card and a light blouse, and she never came back. No cameras, no witnesses, no sign. The police searched for weeks. My father aged in days. My mother went into a silence that lasted until she died. And me? I died inside in installments, month after month, until I learned to live without hope. And now, that symbol, our symbol, appeared in a letter written by Daniel, years after Bea had disappeared. It didn't make sense. No. My mind tried to block out the obvious conclusion, but my heart already knew. It was already there, pulsing the question I didn't have the courage to say out loud. Did Daniel meet my sister? I felt the ground beneath my feet change density. Reality seemed to fold in on itself, as if everything I had known so far was a poorly told version of my own story. I picked up another letter, the next one in the deck. I couldn't wait. I opened it in a hurry, almost tearing the fold, and right in the first few lines, another stone hit my chest. Today someone came to visit me. She recognized me from the newspaper. She didn't tell me her name, but she left a drawing on the napkin before she left. It was a diamond cut in half. I thought it was beautiful. It reminded me of Clara, even though I didn't understand why. When I asked who it was, she just said, "Tell her I wrote letters too." But mine never arrived. The air disappeared from the room. The blood seemed to move with difficulty within my body. It was as if, for the first time in decades, a ghost was speaking directly to me, my sister's voice, piercing through time, silence, and death, if she was indeed dead. I jumped up from my chair, tripping on the carpet and dropping my empty breakfast cup. I went to the back of the house, where I still kept an old metal box with Bia's belongings, photographs, magazine clippings, festival bracelets, and at the bottom of the box, the notebook. It was a diary, but without a lock, just a rubber band holding the pages together, worn by time. I opened it with trembling hands, and there it was, the symbol, repeated over and over, in the corner of each page where she had written something important, and a sentence, strongly underlined. "If one day I disappear, look for me in the words." My knees gave out. I sat on the floor, notebook on my lap and letters scattered around me. The story I thought I knew began to fall apart before me, like a puzzle with pieces hidden for decades. Daniel never told me about Bia. He never mentioned having seen or met my sister. But those letters, those words, suggested otherwise. And more than that, they suggested that she had been alive much longer than we imagined. I returned to Helena's letter. I reread the last lines carefully. Some of the letters I returned today may not have been written by Daniel. I received many in the years since his death. Some seemed to come from different hands. The handwriting changed. The smell of the paper, the words, had a familiar, yet different tone. I kept them, thinking they were forgeries. But now, seeing this symbol, I think you need to read them all, slowly, and understand what I never understood. Letters that didn't seem to be from him, written by someone who knew too much, who wore my symbol, who spoke as if he were still trying to reach me. And then a thought struck me with force. What if my sister had never disappeared completely? What if she had been silenced? Or worse, what if she had been forced to disappear by someone close to her? I picked up the third letter from the deck, but before I could open it, a noise outside made me stop. A sharp sound, like an envelope slipping under the door. I ran over there, and there it was. One more envelope, no sender, with the same letter as the first one. Inside it, a single sheet, and in it, just one sentence. "You are closer than you think, but be careful. There are words that should never be read." I stood for a few minutes in front of the closed door, the envelope still in my hand, as if it might burn my fingers. The phrase repeated in my head like a whispered threat. There are words that should never be read. I walked back to the table with slow steps, afraid of what else I might discover. The letters were there, still tied together, waiting for me to have the courage to untie the string and let the past bleed out onto the kitchen table. But it wasn't just the past. It was as if those words had been waiting for this exact moment to reveal themselves, as if someone knew I was ready now, but not before. I picked up the third card. My hands weren't shaking as much anymore, not because the fear had passed, but because there was something stronger burning inside me, the need to know, even if it meant tearing myself apart. Open it. Clara, yesterday I dreamed about a place you showed me when we were little, a vacant lot full of tall grass, where you said there were hidden treasures. I don't know why I remembered it now, but it made me think, maybe there's still something there. Maybe there's still something you need to see. It wasn't Daniel's handwriting, but it was as if it were, as if the person writing it knew me inside out, better than anyone else. Each word carried a tone that only someone who lived through my childhood could reproduce. My sister. It was the only possible explanation. But why would she write like that? Why didn't she sign her name? Why did she hide in the shadows of other voices? I went back to her journal. I flipped through the pages quickly until I found an old, barely legible entry where she described the land in question, near a disused train line, 2 blocks from our childhood home. I hadn't been there for over 30 years. The neighborhood had changed. The people had changed. But if that note was true, Maybe something had remained there, waiting. I decided I would go, the next day, with or without courage. But that night, before going to sleep, I reread each letter I had received in that bundle, one by one, and with each reading, a new detail jumped out. Sentences that seemed to have been written not to console, but to instruct. Little hidden clues, as if each letter were part of a game played by someone who knew that I would only discover the truth if I accepted going through the pain. The fourth letter was about a mysterious woman who visited Daniel in the hospital during the early hours of the morning. The nurse called her the shadow at the door because she never came in through the front door. She would just stand there, stare, and then disappear without saying anything. The fifth mentioned a notebook hidden behind a false wall in Daniel's closet. It described its contents as notes about Clara, memories of her childhood, things he had no way of knowing. The sixth letter ended with a warning. Someone was trying to tell you the truth, even if Daniel didn't know it. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and for the first time, something very real hit me like a bitter revelation. Daniel didn't just cheat on me with another woman. He may have cheated on me with the truth, and worse, he may have kept secrets about my sister, about her whereabouts, about why she disappeared. But why would he do that? The Daniel I knew was kind, protective. Yes, he made mistakes. But the man who appeared between the lines of these letters, this man seemed involved in something bigger, something he tried to hide until the end. I went to sleep with my head throbbing. But that night, I had a strange dream. I was in a vacant lot, surrounded by dry leaves and the sound of the wind passing through old rails. My sister was calling me, not with words, but with her eyes. She smiled in a way that scared me, and then she turned her back and walked until she disappeared behind a broken wall. When I went after it, all I found was a wooden box, covered in dirt. And when I opened it, I woke up before I saw what was inside. The next day, I put on a coat, tied my hair up, and grabbed Bia's notebook. I wrote the symbol on a loose sheet of paper, a diamond cut in half, and I went to the place. It was like stepping into a forgotten piece of time. The land was still there, smaller, surrounded by new buildings, but there, with weeds growing between the old tracks, with the same smell of old iron. I walked slowly. I looked around. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until I came to a tree, tall, dry, gnarled, as if it had never been allowed to grow properly. And on it, carved with a penknife or knife, was the symbol, just like ours, with an arrow pointing to the ground. I began to dig with my hands. The earth was hard. My nails were tearing. My fingers were cutting. But I kept going, until I heard the dry sound. Wood. It was a box, just like the one in my dream. The lid was loose. Inside were papers, many pages, already damp, some torn, diaries, letters, newspaper clippings, and on top a photograph, me at 15 next to Bia, and someone else, a boy. And what sent chills down my spine was not seeing his face. He recognized that that boy was not Daniel, but it was identical to him. I stayed there, kneeling on the ground, with the photo in my hands, trying to make sense of what my eyes were seeing. Me, in my school uniform. Bia, with her hair tied up in an awkward bun. And between us, that boy, tall, thin, deep-set eyes and the same crooked smile I knew so well. But it wasn't Daniel. That picture couldn't be him. It was too old. And even if he had lied about his age, it didn't make sense. And yet, it was his face. I returned home with the box hidden inside a backpack. I didn't want anyone to see me with it. I still didn't understand what I was facing. I just knew that what I had started reading as a story of broken love was now a doorway to something much darker. I spread the papers out on the kitchen table. I started with the diaries. The writing was small, quick, anxious. They were my sister's. She recorded her days with obsessive precision. The times she left, the names of people she spoke to, whole sentences copied from conversations that she said she needed to keep as evidence. She wrote as if she were preparing to disappear, And on one of the pages, I found a passage underlined twice. His name isn't Daniel, but he looks like him, like they're brothers, or mirrors. I continued reading. On another page, he knows things that no one else knows. He told me things about Clara that even she doesn't remember anymore. He said he's seen her before. But how? Where? When? And why? It was like falling into a bottomless pit. Each line was a downward pull. Each discovery, a dizzying experience. The next page was about a house, a cottage, described as the place where names change, but stories repeat. It was in the countryside, about 2 hours from where we lived at the time. A place she said this man frequented, and where perhaps others knew him by other names as well. A pattern began to form, a pattern that involved men with similar faces, with similar behaviors, with the same words. Daniel, the man in the photo, the stranger who visited hospitals, the one who left symbols on letters, all connected, all somehow hovering over my life and hers. I picked up Bia's notebook and went back to the old diary. I started comparing the handwriting with that of the last letters. And yes, some of the letters in the bundle were hers, written by her, disguised as love letters but with hidden messages, sentences in which the initials of the words formed codes, clues. She was guiding me, even after decades. And then it hit me. Maybe Bia had never been a victim at all. Maybe she had walked away not out of fear, but as a strategy, for protection. Maybe she had discovered something she couldn't tell, something that, if spoken directly, would put her at risk. And now, years later, she was making me follow her leads, because maybe it was the only way I could figure it out without putting her in danger. I went back to the photo. I looked at every detail. On the back, written in blue pen, was a sentence. The name changes, but the look is always the same. I dropped the photo and ran to my memory box with Daniel. I pulled out a picture of us, taken one summer when we went to the beach. I compared the faces, and he didn't just look alike. He was the same man, the same one who was with me when I was 36, the same one who was by my sister's side when I was 15, the same smile, the same look, the same shape of the scar on his right eyebrow. But that was impossible, unless he had never told the truth about who he was and how long he had been around. I went back to the letters, now with a new perspective. I began to look for phrases that had previously seemed merely romantic, but which now revealed something more sinister. It's strange to meet you again after so long. Your face hasn't changed as much as mine. Your sister still looks like you, like she already knows. Every line was a disguised confession, and I had read it all with eyes blinded by resentment. For the first time, I began to understand. Maybe I wasn't betrayed just for love. Maybe I was chosen. And Bia may have disappeared not because she ran away, but because someone silenced her so she wouldn't tell me who he really was. I went to sleep with the box locked inside the closet, but I could barely close my eyes. And in the middle of the night, at 3:17 a.m., my landline phone rang. Yes, the landline. The one that almost no one uses anymore. The one that almost no one has the number for. I answered with a shaking hand. Hello? Nothing. Who's there? And then, a whispered voice. Deep. Familiar. You shouldn't have opened that box. And the line went dead. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone still in my hand, my heart racing as if it were trying to escape my chest. The voice was his. I could have sworn it. That low, restrained hoarseness, as if someone was measuring each syllable before letting it escape. It was the same as Daniel's, or the man in the photo, or whoever it was, but he was dead. Or not. That night, I didn't sleep again. I turned on all the lights in the house. I locked the windows. I went through the letters, the diaries, the old notes. I looked for a clue, an answer, a name in every word. But all I found were pieces of a story that seemed to have no beginning or end, just pain and questions. When the sun began to rise, I went to the bathroom mirror. I looked at myself for an indescribable amount of time. My face was tired. My eyes were puffy. And yet, there was something inside me that had never been there before. A decision. I was going to find out everything. Even if, to do so, I had to let go of all my certainties. I went back to the box. I picked up the letter I hadn't yet opened. The last one in the bundle Helena had left. It was separated from the others, wrapped in a faded red ribbon. There was something almost ritualistic about it, as if it were the final piece of an impossible puzzle. Open it. Clara, if you've come this far, then you know more than you should. But maybe not enough to protect yourself. So I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone. Not even Daniel. Not even you. But somehow it's always been between us. The next words seemed to glide over thin ice. Do you remember your fall? I frowned. What fall? It was summer. You were 7 years old. You were running around the yard when you slipped and hit your head. You were unconscious for 3 days. The doctors said it was normal to forget. But you forgot more than just a fall. You forgot what you saw before you fell. My heart stopped. It was true. I fell. I still have the scar, hidden in my scalp, under my hair. I was always told the same story. A slip. A bump. Nothing serious. But you saw him. The sentence alone, in the center of the page. You saw him before you fell. He was in the backyard, standing still, watching you and Bea play. He wasn't a relative or a neighbor. He was a stranger, but you weren't afraid. You went to him, and before you could say anything, you fell, as if something was pulling you. His hands were sweating. His mouth was dry. After that, you changed. You became quieter. You started talking to yourself. You started writing symbols on the walls. Your parents said it was just a child's imagination. But Bea knew, and she was the one who started writing the diary. Because you forgot, but she didn't. I jumped up. I went to the back of the closet. I grabbed an old wooden box that my mother used to store documents. I rummaged through certificates, notebooks, and old papers. And there it was. A medical report dated 1991. Minor trauma, loss of consciousness, partial amnesic effect. The doctor's name, Dr. Samuel Alencar. I searched the computer. Nothing. No photos, no records. Just an old death notice, dated 2004. Died in a house fire. No relatives, no biography. The feeling of being held by invisible strings grew stronger by the minute. I returned to the note left under the door. There are words that should never be read, but I had already read them, and now they were transforming me. I picked up the phone. I called Helena. The number was still in my daughter's address book, and she had once bumped into it by chance years ago at a family gathering. He called 3 times. 4. Hello? The voice was weak, breathy, but alive. Helena, it's Clara. Silence. I know you're sick. I need to know why you kept all this from me for so many years. She sighed, a sound filled with weariness, with guilt, because I was afraid that he would come after me too. But who is he, Helena? Tell me his real name. Another silence. Longer. You still don't understand? The voice failed. There is no real name, Clara. He was once Marcos. He was once Elias. He was once Daniel. But they are all the same. That's not possible. Are you saying that? I'm saying he's not like us. The call dropped. I stood there with the phone on my lap, the echo of that sentence hammering against the walls of my chest. He's not like us. I ran to the letters again. I picked up the old photo. I looked at every feature of that face that had repeated itself over the years. The same scar, the same look, the same man. It didn't age. It didn't change. And yet, he always came back. I sat on the floor, and for the first time, I let the question emerge with full force. Who exactly did I get involved with? And why, after so many years, does he still watch me? I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I spent the day surrounded by papers, letters, and memories that no longer belonged to me as they once did. It was as if my life had been lent to a story written by someone else. By him. By the one I no longer knew what to call. Daniel? Frames? Elijah? Or something worse? With each letter read, each diary revisited, more pieces fell into place. Not a narrative of love or regret, but something much more complex. Calculated emotional manipulation. From the beginning, from the first time he held the bakery door open for me, it had all been planned. I was no coincidence. I was a destiny he had created. Bea tried to warn me. Helena tried to protect me. But I loved. I believed. Late in the afternoon, I went to the mailbox. There was another envelope. White, plain, no name, no stamp. Inside it, just a paper. Go back to the place where he first kissed you. I stood still for a few minutes. The memory came to me slowly, like an old dream. The bandstand square, in the old neighborhood. It was a simple place, but it was there that he held my face with both hands and said, "You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this." At the time, I thought it was romantic. Today, it seems like a warning. I waited for nightfall. I grabbed a flashlight, Bea's notebook, and went there. The square was empty. The bandstand was intact. But something bothered me. The air. The silence. The feeling that I was not alone. I walked slowly to the center of the iron structure, and on the floor, under a loose plank, I saw something different. I knelt down. I carefully lifted the wood, and there, hidden in a narrow compartment, was one last letter, sealed with wax. Old seal, no date. I opened it with steady hands, and I read, "Clara, if you've made it this far, then you finally know. You finally see. You've always been different, even when you didn't remember, even when they erased the memory of our meeting. We've met before, when you were little. You looked at me and smiled, and that day I knew you wouldn't be afraid, that you would accept me, that one day you would listen to me, even if the whole world told you to run away." The words seemed to pulse. Yes, I was with your sister. She tried to understand me. She tried to push me away, but she didn't understand that what we have is not a choice. It's a connection. It's time sewn into circles. And I came back. I came back because the time has come for you to know who you are and what you've always been. My hands began to sweat. My chest felt heavy. Do you remember the scar on your head? That was no accident. That was a rupture, a moment when your time and mine intersected. And now, it's time to continue the cycle. There was an address at the end of the letter, a place outside the city, an abandoned site, which I recognized as the old municipal orphanage, closed since the 1970s. I went back home. I picked up the childhood photo. I noticed the details. Bea was smiling, but her smile was tense. I was looking at the boy, at him, and in the background of the image, a rusty structure, the gate of the orphanage. That wasn't a memory from a walk. It was a warning that was always before my eyes. I sat on the couch, my breath held, and then I felt it, a chill, like someone was watching me. I slowly turned my face towards the window. He was there, on the sidewalk, standing, the same face, the same look. Time has not touched him. He just watched me, as if waiting for the other to accept the inevitable. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just stared at me for long seconds, until he disappeared into the darkness as if he had never been there. And in that moment, I knew. He wasn't trying to reconnect. He was calling me back, and the last letter was not an end. It was an invitation. The day dawned cloudy, as if the sky itself hesitated to illuminate what I was about to do. I grabbed my coat, a flashlight, and the box with all the letters. All of them. Even the ones that hurt. The ones that tore me apart. The ones that made me hate him and love him at the same time. I drove for almost 2 hours to the countryside. The roads were empty. Just the sound of tires on wet asphalt and my heart beating like a drum in my chest. When I arrived, the orphanage looked exactly like it did in the old photographs. High, cracked walls, rusty gates, and boarded-up windows. A place that time had forgotten. or spared. I pushed the gate open slowly. The creak sounded like a warning. I entered. The tall grass swallowed up the paths. The smell was of earth, of abandonment, and of something I couldn't name. A thick silence, almost solid, as if the air itself held secrets. I headed toward the east wing, the location described in the last letter. I walked through empty corridors, with broken toys thrown on the floor, children's drawings on the walls already erased by time. Each step seemed to sink into a memory that was not just mine. I arrived at a wooden door, half open, and there he was, sitting, as if he had been waiting for me forever. Same face, same look, but now there was something different, something in his eyes, a tiredness that wasn't physical. It was eternal. "Clara," he said, his voice low, unsurprised. "Who are you?" My question came out as a choked whisper. He looked at me for long seconds, then lowered his eyes, and he said, "There is no name for me, because names don't last long enough." I remained silent. "You are not here to understand with your mind," he continued. "You are here to remember with what you feel. You knew my sister. You knew about me. You looked for me when I was a child. I didn't look for it. I recognized it." The words sounded like a sentence. "Why? Because you always knew, even when they erased it from you." What did they erase? He stood up slowly. He walked over to a wall, removed a rotting wooden panel, and behind it revealed an old mural full of photos. Children, women, always women, all with similar eyes, and in each photo, him. The same face, the same age, always there. "That's impossible," I said, my voice shaking. "Not for me." I looked at the pictures again. There was a woman who looked like my grandmother, another, my mother, a young woman who could have been my daughter. "Have you always been with them?" "Not with all of them. Only with those who carry the trace, the memory, the call. And then," he looked at me, sadly, "then they forget, or disappear, or leave me." The words cut deep. "And me? What was I to you?" He came closer, slowly, his face just inches from mine. "You were the mistake, because I truly loved you." Tears fell, but not from pain, from confusion. "You betrayed me. You destroyed me. I tried to leave, but you kept the letters, because I needed to remember." "No," he whispered, "because a part of you always knew the story wasn't over." He held out his hand. In his palm was a small object, the symbol, the diamond cut in half, carved in dark wood. I touched it, and in that instant, I saw it. I saw the backyard of my childhood. I saw the moment I fell. I saw my small body running towards him. I saw my sister screaming. I saw the flash, and I saw the moment when everything went black. When I came to, I was sitting on the floor. He was gone. The orphanage, silent. But now I knew. I knew why I kept every letter. I knew why no pain made me destroy them. Because those words were the invisible threads that connected me to something bigger than pain, bigger than love, bigger than myself. He existed. He shaped me. He chose me. But now, I chose the end. I returned home and, that same night, I burned the letters in the backyard. One by one. With tears, yes. With trembling, yes. But with peace. Because sometimes, forgiving is forgetting with intention. And keeping the letters was my way of staying alive. But burning was my way of being myself again.